summer 2025 box office. We're going to try and uncover the unexpected trends, the triumphs, and some truly surprising turns. Our mission. Well, we want to cut through the raw data, the figures that foreshadow English their respected analytics firm put together in their in-depth box office roundup. We're going to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge, really understand what these numbers tell us about, audience behavior and how the film industry is evolving. Get ready for some aha moments. Okay, so let's unpack this. We should probably start with the reigning champions, right? When we talk summer box office, you kind of have to talk Superman. This film is continuing its impressive flight. It's topping the domestic and international charts. So what do the numbers from this past weekend really tell us about its trajectory?
Well, okay, so in its second Friday, Superman pulled in about $16 million. And it's now expected to get a second weekend haul of around $55 million. That's from 4,275 theaters, which brings its projected domestic total by Sunday to roughly, $232.7 million. And globally, it's getting close, nearing that $400 million milestone. But the standout point here is that while it saw a steep drop, 71% from its first Friday, that's actually, not uncommon for superhero franchises, especially for those huge opening weekends.
71%. That still sounds pretty significant, doesn't it? How does that really stack up against other films in the genre? Does it maybe suggest, an over-reliance on opening weekend hype, or is this just how these massive tentpoles work?
It's largely the nature of the beast, really. I mean, if we compare it to similar big films, Matt Reeves' The Batman, that saw a 50% drop in weekend 2. And James Gunn's own Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2 dropped about 56%. So Superman's performance, it tracks pretty well within its genre. You get that initial rush, and then things tend to stabilize a bit. Its momentum is actually slightly ahead of the Batman's Week 1 numbers by about 3%, and well ahead of Guardians Vol. 3, like 16%. So that indicates audience interest is clearly holding strong for Superman, even with some pretty intense competition coming in.
Right, interesting. And it's not just the superheroes holding strong. That enduring appeal of franchises, it even extends to dinosaurs, apparently. Let's talk about Universal's Jurassic World Rebirth. This thing isn't just surviving, it seems like it's absolutely thriving. What are we seeing there?
Yeah, Jurassic World Rebirth, the one Gareth Edwards directed, it's expected to gross about $21.5 million in its third weekend. That's from 3,854 theaters. And that pushes its projected domestic total by Sunday to a really impressive $274.2 million. If you step back and look at it, this film is showing some serious stamina against the newer releases. Despite Superman arriving and other challengers, it's holding on as a solid second-place contender. It just proves, again, the enduring appeal of that prehistoric spectacle, right? And how this particular entry seems to build on the franchise legacy while also introducing fresh enough elements to keep people coming back.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting, I think. There's this tight race for the third spot on the box office charts, and it's between two very different films. The horror reboot, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and the family-friendly animation Smurfs. Talk about a battle of the genres. Let's dive into I Know What You Did Last Summer first. It seems like it's off to a modest start. Earned just under $6 million on Friday. And it's expected to land somewhere between, $13 million and $15 million for its opening weekend from about 200 locations. And of course, there's that big nostalgia factor. You've got returning stars Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. alongside a new cast. How does this stack up against the franchise's past performance?
Well, it's a classic horror IP, isn't it? Intellectual property. The original, back in 1997, debuted with $15.8 million. It went on to gross $72.5 million domestically and $125.5 million worldwide. Then the 1998 sequel, it opened slightly higher, $16.5 million, but grossed only $40 million here in the U.S. By 2006, the third one, that went straight to video. So yeah, this current reboot's estimated $13 million plus opening. It does kind of align with those old debut numbers, though if you adjust for inflation, it definitely falls short.
Right. So on paper, maybe not a huge splash, but what's really striking is the audience reaction, isn't it? We're seeing this really interesting split between critics and audiences.
Absolutely. That's a key point here. While critics on Rotten Tomatoes, they gave it, a 38% score?
Yeah.
The audience score is sitting at a much more promising 69%. Which is actually the highest audience score in the entire franchise's history. And this really prompts us to ask, whether audience sentiment, especially for these kinds of reboots, now maybe outweighs critical reviews when it comes to commercial success. It's not just nostalgia, I think. It points to a growing group of viewers who are looking for very specific, almost comfort food type cinematic experiences, where the main thing isn't critical acclaim, but more like a familiar emotional connection, or maybe just wanting a low-stakes, high-enjoyment escape. And this could sort of redefine how studios greenlight reboots in the future, maybe prioritizing that fan engagement over traditional critical thumbs up.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. And then in the other corner of this unexpected box office fight, we have Smurfs. It opened to $4 million on Friday across over 3,500 theaters, and it's tracking toward maybe a $12 million weekend. It's almost funny thinking of these two films fighting for the same chart spot.
It is quite the contrast, yeah. This film is clearly aimed at a much younger crowd, mostly kids under 12. And so it's actually slightly underperforming domestically compared to the 2017 film Smurfs, The Lost Village. That one opened with $13.2 million. However, if you look at the bigger picture, the Smurfs franchise has really strong international appeal and massive merchandising power. That's all overseen by Viacom CBS Consumer Products.
Yeah.
So that could seriously boost future revenue, even if the initial domestic numbers are a little soft. Its U.S. performance is just, one piece of a much larger global puzzle.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. Let's transition to films that represent a maybe different side of the box office. We've got streaming giants making their mark and then prestige indies. First up, Apple Original Films F1. What does this performance tell us about the tech giant's strategy in cinema? Is it working?
Well, F1 culled in $2.6 million on Friday. This is in its fourth weekend now. It's expected to earn around $9.4 million for the full weekend, which is about a 28% drop. Pretty decent hold. Its current domestic total, or CUM, is $153.4 million. What's quite remarkable here, I think, is how F1's resilience sort of proves Apple's move into cinema is continuing to gain traction. It's definitely challenging those traditional studio models and showing that audiences are willing to show up for films from these non-traditional studios, even weeks after release.
Okay, and then next we have A24's Eddington. This is that socio-political Western directed by Ari Aster. It debuted wider this weekend, 2,111 sites, and it's tracking to maybe a $4.5 million opening. Now that seems below expectations, right? And significantly less than other recent A24 films like The Phoenician Scheme, which got $6.2 million in its wide break. A24 is known for cultivating this loyal cinephile audience. Does Eddington's struggle hint that even a prestige studio can't always guarantee wide commercial success? Or maybe this is just an anomaly for Ari Aster?
That's a really crucial question. Eddington has a 66% score on Rotten Tomatoes, which is, pretty mixed. And it sits notably below Aster's earlier hits, like Hereditary, that was 90%, and Midsommar at 83%. So in a broader context, this does highlight how A24's prestige reputation doesn't automatically translate to wide commercial success every single time. It makes us wonder how these niche, critically acclaimed films find their audience in a market so dominated by blockbusters. It's not always a guaranteed wide hit, even for a respected studio like A24 or, an acclaimed director like Aster. The audience for these kinds of films can be highly selective, and maybe not swayed by just broader marketing pushes.
So, okay, wrapping some of this up, what does all of this mean for the overall landscape of the 2025 summer box office? What are the big takeaways you're seeing?
Well, summer 2025 clearly shows, I think, that the big tentpole franchises like Superman and Jurassic World Rebirth are still dominating. Absolutely. Studios are leaning heavily on that brand recognition, that mass appeal to drive ticket sales. No surprise there. Then you have the mid-tier films like Smurfs and I Know What You Did Last Summer. They're battling fiercely for their specific niche audiences, and their strategies for success look very different from the blockbusters. There's a really clear division in the market, it seems. Mega-budget films with those built-in audiences, they continue to dominate. While the smaller or more experimental entries, they have to rely much more heavily on, say, critical reception, festival buzz, or maybe cultivating those cult followings to find their footing. This crowded theatrical marketplace, it just means only the most compelling stories, or frankly, the big IP-driven projects are consistently rising to the top.
That makes sense. And just to circle back quickly on it, I know what you did last summer, that history you mentioned. The 97 original did well, the sequel less so.
Right, the 97 film debuted at $15.08, hit $72.05 domestic. The 98 sequel opened okay at $16.05, but only made $40 domestic. Then straight to video in '06. So this reboot's $13 this opening. It's in the ballpark of the debuts, but yeah, inflation adjusted, it's lower. Still, that strong audience score and the returning icons, it signals maybe a successful nostalgic play, even if it's not a monster hit.
Gotcha. So looking ahead then, what do these numbers imply for upcoming releases and for the films we've just discussed, who should be watching whom?
Well, Superman is expected to continue its dominance. It could possibly surpass $500 million worldwide in the coming weeks. Seems likely. But it will face new competition. You've got more superhero sequels coming, animated contenders, some indie hopefuls on the horizon, so it won't have the field to itself. Films like Eddington, the ones underperforming, they might need to recalibrate their marketing, maybe pivot towards streaming platforms for stronger returns, perhaps earlier than they initially planned. On the other hand, it'll be key to keep an eye on I Know What You Did Last Summer. If it shows good legs, hold strong week over week in the next few weekends, that strong audience score suggests it has the potential to maybe revitalize that horror IP for a new generation. We'll see.
So it seems this summer's box office tells a familiar story, in a way. Big brands still win big. Definitely. But there are also clear opportunities for well-timed, well-crafted content, whether that's a huge superhero spectacle, a nostalgic horror reboot, or even an animated family favorite. Audiences, it seems, continue to seek both comfort and spectacle in their movie-going experiences. But, considering this heavy reliance on established franchises and IP, it makes you wonder, what does the future hold for truly original stories in the blockbuster space? How can new non-franchise concepts possibly break through and find that kind of mass appeal when the market is just so dominated by known entities? And what might that mean for the next generation of filmmakers and, well, the types of stories that actually get told on the biggest screens? Something to think about.